For those of you who don't know me, I am the Professional Development Manager at Creative Learning Systems. We are a company that designs learning spaces with curriculum, technology, and all the resources a teacher and students may need to engage in student-directed project-based learning. And that's really the heart of what we do. So we're going to be talking about digital project-based learning today. I know many of you are probably already working remotely, or your schools may be thinking about transitioning kids home and learning from home to prevent the spread of the coronavirus. So we want to be here as a resource and a support for you guys to help you in that transition, because I know it can be a big transition for both you and for your students. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. So again, we're focusing on PBL. Of course, if you guys are kind of looking to do more traditional teaching digitally, I can share plenty of recommendations on resources and how you might do that. Some of the webinars later this week can also feed into that. We'll be sharing some resources that you can use to help manage, learning digitally, resources to kind of provide instruction. So feel free to reach out if you have any questions following this webinar. So many of you are used to teaching, in front of your students. Some of you may have more, traditional with direct instruction, various models, but definitely transitioning to digital learning provides different challenges, and you're going to have to change a lot of things. Your format is going to be different, the way that you structure lessons and projects and activities. I'm sure that many of you have a wealth of resources that you use to support students, whether that's manipulatives or textbooks or diagrams or models of different things. And when you send all your kids home and they're all working in different spaces, that can change the resources available. And so you'll have to get together a bunch of digital resources. Again, the way that you give feedback is going to look different, assess learning, pacing. When your kids are off on their own, many of them may not be able to complete their work at the exact same time. So you're going to have to provide them with some structures to make sure that they are staying on track, but still able, to be flexible based on their needs and what their learning environment looks like at home. So with traditional instruction, typically a teacher, determines the objectives, what standards it is aligned to, presents the content. That's kind of our, sage on the stage where you're sharing information. You usually determine, or traditional instruction, teachers determine what activities students engage in. Throughout the lesson, you're providing small group and individual support. And a lot of times your assessments are kind of standardized across maybe your grade level, your state, your county, and it's pretty standard criteria whether students meet those objectives or not. And the student, their role in there is to, listen to the content, understand, engage in it, complete the activities, and take their assessment. With student-directed project-based learning, that's kind of where we spend all of our time, and we feel it's really important, this model of instruction. A teacher presents a challenge or a problem, then curates a collection of resources to support that. Can be digital, especially with digital learning. That's what form these resources are going to take. A teacher in digital PBL provides structure and helps with pacing. That may not be, on demand at the moment pacing, but here's some rough estimates of timing and when you should have project components or the whole project done. You're also ensuring accountability. So making sure that students are doing their job, doing their best work, and keeping on top of that. The teacher role also switches to be more of a guide. So you're serving as a resource, can connect kids with materials that are going to be helpful to them, providing feedback so they're improving the quality of their work, and questioning to kind of get them on the right track, getting them thinking about different concepts. Typically in PBL, we're also looking at assessing more of the process of learning. So how students are accomplishing a project, looking at more of those essential skills, and also how students grow from the beginning of a project to the end of a project. There's that personalization piece. The students have a bigger role in this form of instruction. So they're designing their project, they develop a plan, they're really owning how they're going to achieve a challenge or a problem. They're going to pick and choose what resources are useful to them, and they're going to document their process and make sure that they're sharing how they're progressing. So with digital PBL, kind of the process that you can start to look at is starting with a broad goal, challenge, or problem. By making it open-ended, you give kids more freedom to be creative, to incorporate things they're interested in, and also to differentiate it for all your students. It really makes it accessible to all. Then you want to start gathering some resources that your students will use to complete their project. These could go into a Google Drive folder. They could be set up on a Google Doc with links. You could put them into a Padlet. There's all different ways that you could share this information with your students. Then you'll want to provide some kind of structure or guidelines. This could be where you look at the standards that you want to meet and how you want to incorporate those. You could have certain components they need to complete, certain timelines, just kind of that outline of your expectations and what they need to make sure is part of their project. And then another big component is figuring out how you're going to support students and make them accountable, and how you're going to check in or give them avenues to get support from peers or other resources. So what that could look like is, I was thinking about high school studies government and the structure of the government. So a really open-ended challenge could be, you're the leader of a new nation. How will your government be structured? And I purposely made this not just how is the United States government structured, because it allows them to apply what they're learning in that kind of higher level format. So then if I was curating resources, I might add links to web pages from countries all over the world and how they structure their government, maybe events that have impacted the government, either where it didn't work and it ended up in a bad situation, or if they made a change and how that affected their country. Those are all resources that you could pull together. Then for a structure, I may say they've got to discuss strengths and weaknesses. They need to be able to compare it to other governments and explain their choices. So it's at higher level, still pulling in the information they're learning about the United States government, and those would be components that they need to include. And then the last would be just how students are getting support and questions. So Padlet could be an example. But then kids could put this project together in whatever way they want. Maybe they want to create a commercial or a podcast about this new government. And maybe they're looking and analyzing this new government, and that's the perspective that they're going to take when they share this information. Or it could be a pamphlet, come live in our new country, here are all the great things about it. So the kids have the freedom to then determine what format they want to share it, and so they have that ownership part in designing their project. So we at Creative Learning Systems, we use, we call it Smart Lab Learning. That's increasing student capacity through active, social, and engaged problem solving. And that's, our student-directed PBL. And we anchor a lot of what we do to a project cycle. So many of you are familiar with engineering design project cycles. Very similar, there's a lot of components that you'll see that are similar. But we have 4 different phases. So our students spend time exploring. This is typically a technology. but it could be a resource, it could be a set of resources, a website, a book, you know, it could be an interactive website or tool. Then they spend time planning their project. And typically we present them with a challenge, and then they use the technology to meet the challenge. And so part of their planning process is setting an objective and really describing how they're going to accomplish that. Students then spend time doing and reflecting. And we have this together because they're constantly engaging in reflection as they're working on their project. And this is the vast majority of the time that they're spending engaging in one project. The last section is sharing. We really value sharing. Students make meaning by how they share and interact with others and get feedback on it. And so some kind of sharing is important. Again, that could be a digital gallery walk. It could be pairing groups together and sharing feedback or commenting on the work that was created. But this is the cycle that we lead kids through every project and can be a really good structure to give your students, you know, in the digital space when they no longer have you in front of them guiding them through it. Giving them structures is really important so that they can continue to work through and kind of feel safe and comfortable. And so this is a project cycle that you could definitely incorporate into your digital learning. Something else that I wanted to share is our journal. I'm gonna real quick check and make sure there's no questions. If you guys have questions, because you are muted right now as default, go ahead and send them in the Zoom chat and I can answer them. But this is one of our journals. So students use the journal throughout their entire PBL and through their entire project. And it's important that kids are documenting every day, not only to reflect on their progress, but it's also a really good way in the digital space for you to check in with them and see what they're getting done, what questions they have, what challenges they're encountering. So again, we have that project cycle that's anchoring students. The first day they're exploring and reflecting on questions and what they learned. We have supports for writing a SMART objective. And that's really to make sure that kids are being specific, they have a set plan, and there's also some success criteria. So is it attainable and how will they know when they're done? And then they can monitor that throughout their progress, throughout their project, and at the end of the project determine whether they have met their SMART objectives. There's spaces for students to document what they're doing each day, any challenges they're having, and then they're reflecting on their work. And again, that would be a piece that then feeds into sharing in whatever format you would like students to share. So the journal is something that I'll be sharing with all of you that you can use. I've actually added it to our Launchpad, which houses all of our curriculum. If you got the email, you also saw that we are offering 8 weeks of free curriculum, access to our curriculum so that you can support your kids in digital learning. And so the resources will be there as well. But if you just want to use it to kind of build, to use a journal for your own projects that you're designing, then I will be emailing that out as well after this webinar. Something else I wanted to share with you is our learning launchers. This is what we call our curriculum. And it is designed to be student-facing in a smart lab, which is what we call our learning spaces. The teacher really acts as a support and a guide, but the students are interacting with the curriculum independently, especially 3rd and up. K2, they require a little bit more support, so it looks a little different. And you'll notice that if you gain access to the curriculum. But for the older grades, they're using it on their own. So this is one of our learning launchers. And as you can see, there's 4 tabs across the top. And that's kind of how we help students sequence through the project a little bit. It is designed to be nonlinear, so if students want to go through it at a different pace or order, they can. But our first part is giving a challenge, and it's pretty open-ended. So this challenge is to learn about wavelengths. Kids can do that in a lot of different ways for a lot of different purposes. So when they write their SMART objective, they make it more specific to what they want to learn or how they want to apply it. We include the main kind of objectives, what they should be learning, and the stuff that they'll require. We then give them a lot of background knowledge. So this is usually content and also some specific to the technology they may be using. So if you, for example, wanted them to use, let's see, like a cartoon, like Powtoon Animation Maker, to make a video about their new government that they have set up. You may include some tutorials for them to get started so they can learn how to use that technology. And then you may also include all the resources about the governments that you want them to take a look at. The next section is our Do It section, and this is where we give them steps to kind of get started. Some resources, things to try, activities to do, questions to think about as they work through it. And then there's an extension. There's always the students who finish a little bit earlier than everybody else. And so these are some additional activities to take it to the next level so they can continue to work, continue to learn, and have a meaningful activity to do while they have additional time. So this is our structure for curriculum. It's a structure that you could emulate in the resources that you're giving your kids. If you do get the curriculum access, then you will see a lot of these digital resources, and your kids will be able to use those and engage with those. And hopefully now you understand a little bit about the structure so you can implement it in your own classrooms. So again, depending on how you heard about this webinar, you may have received an email with a little Get the Curriculum button in it. That leads you to a form where you can request access to the curriculum. That's super easy to do. You can also email our support team at support@clsonline.com and just mention that you are requesting curriculum access. Include your name, school, email address, and phone number, and we'll get you set up with a login and some resources so you understand a little bit about how the Launchpad works. We also have some more webinars coming up this week to cover even more topics that are going to be helpful in the transition to digital learning. So tomorrow we're going to cover classroom management and how you support kids, make sure they're continuing to work. On Thursday, we're going to talk about authentic assessments, how we do it here, how you might do it in your classroom. On the 20th, it's going to be sharing of different activities and resources that can support you teaching from home and your kids learning from home. And then on Monday, our last one is going to be kind of adapting to digital learning. So what are some of those challenges? What are some things to keep in mind? And kind of resetting your perspective of how does this work in a digital space compared to a brick and mortar classroom. I'm going to open it up to questions. So if you guys have anything, you can raise your hand. I noticed someone asked about creating an account for Creative Learning Systems. So again, if you email support@clsonline.com, they will give you a login and the information to access the site. And you are welcome to share that with your school and other teachers in your building as well. So please go ahead and share. We want to make sure that everyone is supported in this challenging time. So feel free to do that. They can also reach out and get it from us as well. What other questions do you guys have? I always joke when I'm on I'll call with teachers wait time. I always give plenty of wait time. If you guys have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. You can send it to our support email. We also have an academics email, academics@clsonline.com. Yes, I will make sure you guys get a recording. I will be posting that both on our Launchpad and sending it out.
Haley, there are just a couple questions for you. So one is like, how do we create an account, which you went through? We can reiterate again. The other one is, how do we get the 8-week score, and how do we get a copy of the recording?
Okay, yep. Yeah, so the 8-week score is what you can get from emailing our support team, and they will give you access to all of that stuff. I have actually put it on our Launchpad already. Let me see if I can real quick log in. But it'll be all in there. So when you request that, that information will be shared with you and you'll be able to get that. You can also ask us, like, if you just want a PDF version, just to see what it is, we can also send it to you. And yes, I will send out a copy of the recording. You should also be able to go in, I believe, through your webinar link and get to the recording. It'll take a couple hours to process, but I'll send a follow-up email this afternoon or early tomorrow with all the resources I mentioned to everyone who attended today. That way you have it in an email from me, and I'll include reminders of the answers to those questions. All right. Well, if there's no other questions, we are gonna sign off for today, and hopefully we'll see a bunch of you tomorrow. If you can't make it tomorrow, we will post the recording. So you can always contact us if you have difficulty finding it. But enjoy the rest of your day and make sure you stay healthy, and we'll talk to you guys soon.